Welcome everybody, thanks for joining me today, and this is one of the follow-on videos. We're talking about the Fortress Trade range of paints. Now these are available through Screwfix. You've seen probably on the last video where I was trying out on Dave the Door, we call it the acrylic primer undercoat. It's actually primer undercoat, walls and wood, and that is the water-based primer stroke undercoat. Now you've seen that video. I've done Dave the Door 2 coats, quite impressed with that. It went on all right. My only negative was, and if you've watched that video, I didn't really like how the tin lid detached from the top of the paint can. It's not very easy to get off. But today we're following on. We've now got a sound substrate. We've got a sound surface to work over, and we're going to go with the next one. Right, we've got the Fortress Trade, and you've seen the thumbnail. It's actually the satin finish. Now the satin finish, again, water-based. It's non-yellowing, quick drying. It's touch dry within 2 to 4 hours. Recoat time says 10 to 12 hours, and proper cure time, you're looking at about 7 days. We can cope with that. Now the reason we're doing this range of videos is it's a budget paint. This is 13 quid a tin for a litre. Now compared to the other paints that we use normally, I'm looking at my shelf table down here. When we work out paints at the cost of per litre per can, you're looking at about 27, 28, 29, 30, 31 pounds a litre. I know you get it cheaper if you buy a bigger quantity. So if you're buying 5 litres at a time, that actually reduces the price of the litre can. But if you're only wanting small amounts of paint, because you've only got a door, a bit of skirting, door frame, and maybe a small window to do or something like that, a litre can's going to be ample for you. So we're trying out what these budget cheap paints are like. And to be fair, I was quite impressed with how that, let's call it the acrylic primer, went on. It needed 2 coats because I did think it was a little bit transparent for the first coat, which won't matter if you were going over a white previously painted door that you've sanded down. You want to undercoat it, and then you want to put your top coats on. Now your top coats, as with most of these water-based paints that we try nowadays, is a 2-coat top finish. If you read the back of the can, I always say read the instructions. It tells you about preparing your surface, getting a coat of the primer undercoat on, and then putting 2 top coats on for really the best way to do it. Because your first coat will soak into that drier finish of the undercoat, but when you start putting the top coat on, that then sits nicely on itself. And a lot of people get confused about the words self-undercoating, self-priming with these eggshells and stuff. It's a case of you put 1 coat on and you put the top coat on over the top, and that's how it works. You still have to prepare your surface properly. You're not trying to do, when it says self-undercoating, you're not trying to do away with not having an undercoat, because it will clearly depend on what you're going over. But when it says self-undercoating it means you put 2 coats on of itself. Now this is mainly on oil-based paints, and we're touching today on water-based. But we'd give 2 coats because it gives a nicer finish when it's dry. Same with your glosses, and I've got a gloss to try after this. The gloss paint always goes better on itself, and you get a better gloss from it. So what I'm going to say to you is, we're going to give this cheap paint a go. We've got Dave the Door all prepared up. I'm going to be painting this as I normally do for the first time. Never tried it before. I've got some paint out. I've got my nice Knorr Heritage brush to try it with. I will tell you what it feels like as I'm applying it. I will get on with it. I'll leave it. I'll come back tomorrow, give it a second coat. I might even push it today if I can get nearly 10 hours between. We will see. But it might be tomorrow morning. I'll get a coat on it and see what it's like for the second coat, and then we'll do a sum up at the end. So yeah, available at Screwfix. £12.99 a can it's cost me. Nobody's given me any sponsorship on this. I know you see the paper motion in the corner. Let me make that clear. That only really relates to my Amazon affiliate account, where you can buy things off Amazon. I get a small percentage, a very small percentage of a commission if anything does get purchased. But I'll be true to my word. If I do get sponsored by anybody, I will be singing from the rooftops if I get a sponsorship from somebody to try something out and they provide me with payment and goods. But we will see. Right, let's crack on. First things first, got to sniff the bristle. Now, that paint, it's a satin. You can smell a bit of an ammonia to it. That means a bit of water-based smell to it, as you'd expect. But no, nothing too pungent with that. Now, I will say to you, this is straight out the can. I've not thinned it. I've not added anything to it. I'm just going with it as it is. And do you know what? Straight away, that feels a nice consistency of paint as I'm applying it. Before anybody shouts at me, I have rubbed the door down just with a fine Merca Gold Flex pad. You will see those for sale in my Amazon store. But so far, the thickness of that paint feels like I'm actually putting something on. Now, it'll be very interesting to see where I did that scratch test with the coin. I can just see the marks underneath. Don't know whether you can. I'll zoom you in. Maybe. You can just see some marks where I used the coin last time. Let's see if this covers. Hopefully it will do. It feels a very dry surface, the undercoat that I'm going over. Whereas I said last time when I was actually doing the undercoat, you can get undercoats that do have a little bit of a finish to it that make it easier for applying your top coats. Isolac is one of those that the undercoat's actually a nice finish when it's dried. If anything, I'd just say this is a little bit too dry as an undercoat, but that's not a bad thing because we're giving 2 top coats. Right, I'm just laying off. Now, I'm not particularly warm in this garage studio. I have got a heater on, just making it a little bit more pleasant to work in. And I don't want to say it's drying off on me too quick because it's not. But all in all, that panel there has actually applied quite nicely. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to get that door painted now, and I will see you tomorrow, and I'll have had a second coat on it. But so far, so good. You know what I'm like for interjecting in between me saying I'll see you tomorrow. Now, this paint's interior, exterior, wood and metal, and non-yellowing. Purely an acrylic based product, so you're not going to see, you know, when you move a wardrobe away from skirting boards, you see yellow where oil based paints have gone off because they've not had the light, natural light to it. But this, the application of that wasn't too bad at all. I would say it did pull slightly, i.e. drag, because we're going over a dry surface, a little bit like when you go over a cheap contract matte emulsion and you've got a little bit better quality paint that you're going over with. That's not a bad thing. I would probably say next time round, and I'll probably do it for when I do the second coat, I'll put a splash of water into it just to ease it down slightly, just to help the flow of the paint, which this is what you get. Fingers crossed, and I'm doing inverted commas. With trade paints, you get, with a trade paint, you get the, you should really get that little bit of a thicker paint that you can ease depending on what you're going over and depending on the substrates that you're painting. You might find it just needs to be a little bit thinner so you can, you know what I say, dilute to taste. But I would probably say that's gone on all right, but you'd probably benefit from a splash, literally a splash of water. I'm not on about 5 to 10%. I'm literally on about just a little bit of a sponge, a little bit of a cup of water. You know, I've got a little jug. You can put a little bit of water to it and just ease it down. You would probably find the flow of the paint will benefit from it as well. But all in all, that is still wet. It's looking a little bit shiny. You can see my ring light from this corner, just giving a halo effect just there. I want to see what it's like when it dries, because a lot of these paints are saying satin, but actually when they've dried off, they're more of an eggshell stroke semi-satin finish. It's nice when you've got a satin finish and it has literally got what you feel a satiny finish. And if you want to know what I mean by satiny finish, I always give the example of a piece of UPVC. Got a satin finish to that. And now the reason I brought that out is because if you saw my last video using the undercoat, I have tried 2 coats of that acrylic primer on some UPVC after preparing it with some light sandpaper abrade and wiping it down with cellulose. And you may have seen my YouTube short. Do you know what? That isn't scratching off. This is for a future video, but so far that primer's not scratching off UPVC. No. So, right, I will see you tomorrow. Morning, everybody. We've got a bright and early start. Now, I said I'd come back the next day, and I have done. I'm getting ready to second coat this. I like to talk to you and, well, say it as it is. There's not a bad sheen level on that as the first coat of paint that's dried off. Quite happy with the finish. Do you know what? Dragging my nails across that, it feels solid. The actual tin, always read the can because it's where the instructions are. It says non-yellowing, tough and durable. And I have to say, that as a first coat over there is one of the nicer paints that I've tried. And don't forget, this is actually a budget paint. So we're looking at the lower end of the scale when it comes to paint costs. But all in all, that's not too bad. I've not nibbed it down. I'll give it a nib down and a dust off before I coat it up. But what I want to talk to you before we come to a conclusion, I've literally, as I said yesterday, it was a little bit round, means a bit thick. I've stuck a little bit of water to the paint kettle full of paint that I've got. I've got about that much paint in this kettle. This is one of those old Eco-Ease recycled paper mache kettles. I've only got a Natsai full in there, and literally I've put a spot of paint. And if you say, is it 5 to 10%? It's probably not even 5%. All I've done is just added some water to the paint, mixed it up, made it a little bit easier to apply, hopefully, because I did find it pulled slightly. That's probably because it was going over a dry surface. But not to worry, we've just put a little bit of water in it, see if it makes any difference to the application of the paint. Now, I'm going to say to you, because you see a lot of videos on TikTok and everything where people are washing brushes out. Sometimes it's nice to wash your brush out because it's a bit crispy from the last time you've used it. But on the whole, I don't wash a brush out before I'm coming to use it for painting. I like to just bed the brush in, work it into the paint kettle, into the paint, on the side, rub it on the side, make sure you've loaded your brush up, and away you go. Because it doesn't take long before you've started applying paint that the bed brushes in even more. I'm not looking at getting loads of paint on so it paints me a full section in one go. I'm not really worried about that because I can add more paint as I require. So all I do is just bed my brush in. One of the pet hates that I've got is when I do wash a brush out in between painting. You know, you have to wash your brush out water-based paints every 25 minutes, an hour, depending on how it dries and it's clogging up your brush. But one of the pet hates is that you never seem to be able to get out all the water, whether you spin it or shake it. There'll always be that little bit of water that is in the base, in the stock of the bristle. It creeps out with the paint and it either thins your paint down as you're going or it actually oozes out and drips. But you've just got to be mindful of it. Each to their own. I don't feel a need to be wetting in brushes or rollers. So, yeah, let's crack on. You'll see me just painting. We'll blend out and I'll see when it's all dry. 2 to 3 hours. I'll probably come back after it's nicely hardened off. I've got heat in here. But let's just see what this is like with a little bit of water to it. And first initial thoughts of that, a lot better. So on that note, I'll see you in a bit. There we have it, everybody. I'm coming to you well after 6 hours of me doing the application of that. Now, usual, touch dry, couple of hours. Recoat time, they do say for a second coat, recoating 10 to 12 and cure times 7 days. So that, I can run my hand over it. You want to know what it looks like. I don't know whether you'll see on there. Try and get me light across it. And sheen level, I would say it's probably around about that 30%, probably 25 to 30%. Looks very similar to those that know about Helmi 30. It's probably around about that. So it's more of a semi-eggshell stroke on the verge of satin, more than a full satin that you might expect round about a 40% sheen level. 0 being flat as a pancake, 100 being a lovely oil gloss. Hybrid glosses around about the 85, 90, 95%. You'll find that acrylic glosses that aren't hybrid around about that 80%. So if I'm looking at this, what sheen level, I'd probably say around about that 25 to 30. Correct me if I'm wrong. But on the whole, the application of that went on really nicely. That spot of water into it, it literally was a spot of water, helped with that application. You would probably benefit from a little bit more water to it. But that said, I'd actually say that's gone on fine. Brush mark wise, no different than what I'd expect, to be honest. Flow out is actually all right. I won't say, I mean, what we're looking at, we're looking at a 13 quid tin of paint for a litre. And do you know what? It applies nice. The finish looks nice. And the white, yeah, it's spot on. The white's actually really good. Now, when it says on the side, non-yellowing, tough and durable. What do we want to see for a tough and durable paint? I've got the metal can opener. Let's just see what we're looking at. Clearly, I can put marks in it from a metal instrument, implement, whatever you want to call it. I've not scratched anything off there. I'm going to go in with a 50p piece. Do you know what? Other than seeing where I put the 50p piece across the surface, that hasn't scratched off. So I'd actually say for the money, we're not a bad paint at all. Let's just see if I can get... I've got one of them big man whites, you know. That's taken that mark off from the 50p. I can just feel it slightly softening up. I'd say it just feels like it's softening up the paint because that's a moist wipe against an acrylic water-based surface. But let's put it this way. I think if we'd gone 7 days of curing, that would be a little bit harder. But do you know what? How impressive is that? That a 50p. Let's do it again. 50p. Put some marks on the surface. You can see that. Can you see it? And I go with one of those, what is it? The XL. You know which ones I mean. And I can wipe it off. Do you know what? That's ticking a lot of boxes. So that's the question. Who do you think makes this paint? It's under the Fortress Trade paint label brand. And it's sold through Screwfix. Screwfix also sell Lick Pro paint, which I've tried. You've seen a video there where I do the eggshell and vinyl matte. They were all right paints. They were all right. But this, do you know what? I'm going to say to you, if you're looking for a budget-friendly paint to go over stuff, you're not going to go wrong with that. You're not going to go wrong with that. I'm just checking now. Can't see any runs on it. Can't see any runs. Can't see any creeps on these edges. And, well, you know what I'm going to say. There's paints out there that are probably over double the price of that do creep and run. And you know what? I think for the money, you can't go wrong. I'm going to give it a big thumbs up on that. So we have found actually a budget paint that I'm going to say I recommend. So actually, I'm going to say this is a budget-friendly paint that if you're a DIY, a semi-pro professional that wants something quick and easy that you can actually get your hands on, normally Screwfix are open 7 days a week. Can't go wrong with that, can you? What can I say? All I can say is watch the videos at the end. Thank you.